I paid for my sister's education while working two jobs, only to have her call me a loser at a family dinner. She was shocked when I stopped paying her rent and told everyone why she could no longer afford her lifestyle. The flashbulb seemed to magnify the unnatural sheen of Karen's smile. Mike, ever the stoic, allowed a proud glimmer to touch his eyes. Their younger daughter, Ashley, stood between them, radiating confidence as she held the acceptance letter from Crestwood College. Everyone acted like she had just invented cold fusion. Ashley has always been special, Karen declared to the assembled relatives and neighbors, her voice ringing with pride. A true scholar. This is a dream come true for her. Ashley, basking in the spotlight, launched into a detailed explanation of her intended major, pre-law, naturally, the exclusive internships she planned to secure, and the career she would undoubtedly dominate. Her words painted a future so bright, it was almost blinding. I leaned against the wall, the celebratory din a dull hum in my ears. I wasn't immune to the family's collective joy, but a nagging anxiety twisted in my gut. Crestwood was a prestigious institution, renowned for its rigorous academics and its even more exorbitant tuition. Karen and Mike, bless their hearts, were barely scraping by as it was. A mechanic by trade, I was accustomed to the tang of oil, the bite of wrench against bolt. I found satisfaction in the tangible, a sputtering engine brought back to life, a worn-down car restored to its former glory. College had never been in the cards for me. I had the grades, but not the funding. I had long accepted my path, setting my sights on saving for a small house, a modest life. As Ashley continued her pronouncements, I ran the numbers in my head, a silent tally of the impossible. Tuition, room and board, books, the inevitable incidentals. It was a mountain of debt, a burden Karen and Mike could never shoulder alone. I knew what was coming. I had seen the subtle glances, the pointed remarks during family dinners. Ashley is so bright, Karen had said just last week, her eyes lingering on me. It would be a tragedy to let her potential go to waste, but college, it's just so expensive these days. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, a silent plea, a carefully constructed expectation. I knew what they wanted. I was the responsible one, the dependable son, the one who could make it happen. I took a slow breath, the scent of my mother's pot roast suddenly acrid. Family took care of family, that was the motto, wasn't it? But what happened when taking care of meant sacrificing your own dreams, your own future? I smiled, a tight, strained expression that probably looked more like a grimace. Congratulations, Ashley, I said, my voice a little too loud. That's great news. Ashley barely acknowledged me, already deep in a conversation about the latest fashion trends on campus. Karen, however, gave me a meaningful look, a silent message of gratitude and expectation. The weight of inheritance had just been transferred, to me. The initial requests were small, almost insignificant. A textbook here, a lab fee there, working overtime at the garage and picking up shifts at the local diner. I didn't think much of it. It was just a temporary pinch, I told myself. Once Ashley settled into her studies, she'd find a part-time job, take out student loans, and ease the burden. But the small pinches soon became a constant, unrelenting pressure. Rent, utilities, groceries, the endless stream of expenses that came with the college experience. Ashley, it seemed, had a knack for discovering hidden costs. I'll pay you back when I graduate, she promised, her voice bright and confident. I'll get a great job, and you'll be the first one I pay. I wanted to believe her. I desperately wanted to see a flicker of gratitude, a hint of understanding in her eyes. But all I saw was entitlement, a quiet expectation that the money would always be there. Karen and Mike weren't any better. They treated my sacrifices as an obligation, a testament to my filial duty. Family takes care of family, Karen would repeat, her voice taking on a sanctimonious tone. You're doing a wonderful thing for your sister. Wonderful. It felt more like a slow bleed, a constant drain on my resources and my spirit. I watched my savings dwindle, my dream of owning a house receding further and further into the distance. My weekends, once dedicated to tinkering with cars and spending time with friends, were now consumed by extra shifts at the diner. Meanwhile, Ashley was living the high life. Her social media was a curated display of designer clothes, expensive meals, and weekend getaways. She posed with friends, laughing and carefree, as if she didn't have a care in the world, none of which she could afford. I gritted my teeth and tried to focus on the future. Once she graduates, I told myself, it will all be worth it. she'll get a great job, pay me back, and everything will go back to normal. But deep down, a seed of resentment was beginning to sprout. I was working myself to the bone while she was living her best life, funded by my sweat and sacrifice. I tried to talk to Karen and Mike about it, to express my concerns about the escalating costs. But they brushed me off, minimizing my struggles and maximizing Ashley's potential. "She's building a future," Karen would say, her voice laced with reproach. "You should be proud to help her." Proud? I was exhausted, resentful, and increasingly isolated. One evening, while I was working a double shift at the diner, Tom, my coworker, noticed the dark circles under my eyes and the weariness in my movements. "You look like hell," Tom said, handing me a cup of coffee. "What's going on?" I hesitated, then poured out my frustrations. The weight of my sacrifices finally spilling over. Tom listened patiently, his expression growing grimmer with each word. "She doesn't appreciate you," Tom said finally, his voice low and steady. "You're bending over backwards, and she acts like you owe her. That's not family, that's exploitation." I stared at Tom, the truth of his words hitting me like a punch to the gut. Was I being exploited? Was I being used? The thought lingered, a bitter taste in my mouth. As Ashley settled into college life, her spending habits became increasingly extravagant. Designer handbags, trendy shoes, expensive dinners, items I could only dream of owning. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she got a part-time job, I told myself. Maybe she was just trying to fit in. But when I cautiously asked her about it, she shrugged it off. "Everyone at school dresses like this," she said, her tone dismissive. "I don't want to look like I don't belong." It wasn't just the money, it was the attitude, the complete lack of consideration for my sacrifices. She never asked how I was doing, never offered to help, never even said thank you. Her calls were always the same, complaints about her professors, her roommates, the lack of decent coffee in the campus cafeteria. She never once asked how I managed to juggle 2 jobs just to keep her afloat. The resentment simmered, bubbling beneath the surface. I was tired of being treated like my life didn't matter, as long as hers was moving forward. One afternoon, I visited Karen and Mike. I hoped to broach the subject of Ashley's spending, but found that I couldn't bring myself to do so. The two sat at the dinner table, where Ashley's acceptance letter still sat under a frame. They went on and on about how much Ashley was enjoying the school. I listened and nodded politely. I wanted to leave. As the sun set, I felt a deep anger well up inside me. I said my goodbyes and left the house. I am being used, I thought. I have to get out of this situation. The turning point came when Ashley casually mentioned that she was thinking about studying abroad for a semester. She didn't even ask if I could afford it. She just assumed I could handle it. "I think it would be such a great experience," she said over the phone, her tone light and carefree. "The program costs a little more, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, right?" I sat there, gripping the phone, trying to process what she just said. I could barely keep up with her regular expenses, and now she wanted me to pay for a semester abroad. In another country. I tried to explain to her that I couldn't possibly afford it, that I was already stretched to the breaking point, but she wouldn't listen. "Don't you want me to have the best possible education?" she demanded, her voice rising in indignation. "Don't you want me to succeed?" I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. I felt like I was drowning, suffocating under the weight of her expectations. I decided to confront Karen and Mike, hoping they would finally come to their senses, but they doubled down. "This is an incredible opportunity for her," Karen said, her eyes shining with excitement. "You'll figure it out. You always do." I was floored. No acknowledgement of how hard I was working, no concern for my welfare, just the expectation that I would keep sacrificing because apparently that was my role in the family. I walked out of their house feeling more alone than ever. Family dinner was supposed to be a casual get-together, a chance to catch up and reconnect, but I dreaded it. I knew what was coming. More veiled requests, more subtle guilt trips, more thinly disguised expectations. When I arrived, the atmosphere was already tense. Karen and Mike were fussing over Ashley, showering her with attention and praise. I sat quietly, waiting for someone, anyone, to ask how I was doing. But of course, that never happened. Halfway through dinner, Ashley brought up the study abroad program again. She went on and on about how amazing it would be, and how everyone she knew was doing it. Then she turned to me, a sly glint in her eyes. "I hope you're ready for a little extra work, big brother," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "These programs don't come cheap." I froze. I couldn't believe she had the audacity to say that in front of everyone, like it was a done deal. Maybe you should get a part-time job, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Ashley laughed, a shrill mocking sound. Me? A part-time job? That's funny. I'm too busy with school. That was it, the last straw. I put down my fork and stared at her, my anger finally reaching its boiling point. You're joking, right? I said, my voice dangerously low. You think I'm just going to keep funding your lifestyle forever while you sit around doing nothing? The room fell silent. Karen and Mike looked at me as if I had just committed a sacrilege. Ashley's jaw dropped, but she quickly recovered. What's your problem? She snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. You've always been so bitter. Just because your life isn't going anywhere doesn't mean you have to take it out on me. That hit me like a punch in the gut. After all I had done for her, sacrificing my time, my money, my dreams, this was how she saw me, a failure. Her words hung in the air like a slap in the face. I could feel my blood boiling, but I refused to let her have the last word. Bitter? I said, leaning forward. You think I'm bitter because my life isn't going anywhere? Ashley, my life isn't going anywhere because I was too busy funding yours. Karen and Mike immediately jumped to her defense. That's inappropriate, Karen said, her voice sharp. You're her brother. It's your job to support her. My job? I repeated, letting out a bitter laugh. When did it become my job to work 2 jobs so she could live in luxury? When did it become my job to sacrifice my entire future so she can have hers handed to her on a silver platter? Ashley folded her arms and rolled her eyes. Oh, there it is, she muttered. The martyr routine. That was it. I was done. You know what? I said, standing up. Go ahead and call me a failure, Ashley, but at least I worked for everything I have. What have you done? Nothing. You sit around spending my money while you pretend you're better than me. I turned to Karen and Mike. And you two are no better. You've enabled her selfishness at every turn, and I'm done playing along. I'm not paying for anything anymore. Not her rent, not her tuition, nothing. The silence was deafening. Ashley's face went pale, and for the first time, she looked genuinely shocked. You can't do this, she said, her voice shaking. How am I supposed to live? Figure it out, I said, grabbing my jacket. I've been doing it for years. Maybe it's time for you to learn. I walked out of that dinner, feeling a mixture of anger and relief. For the first time, I had stood up for myself, but I knew the fallout was coming. The next morning, my phone exploded with texts and calls. First, it was Ashley, her messages alternating between passive-aggressive jabs and desperate pleas. Thanks for ruining dinner. Hope you feel good about leaving your own sister out to dry. You're really gonna leave me like this after all I've been through? I ignored every message. I refused to engage in her manipulative games. Then Karen and Mike got involved, their calls filled with disappointment and accusations. I don't know what's gotten into you, Karen said, her voice dripping with disapproval. Ashley needs your help. She's your sister. She's been my financial responsibility for years, I shot back. It's time for her to grow up and take care of herself. Mike was even more direct, accusing me of being selfish and punishing Ashley for no reason. What's she going to do now? He demanded. Get a job, I said bluntly, like the rest of us. I hung up the phone, feeling exhausted and emotionally drained. I knew this was just the beginning. Later that week, I received a call from Mr. Henderson, Ashley's landlord. Apparently, she had told him that I was the one who paid her rent, and when the payment didn't go through, he had contacted me directly. She's not my problem anymore, I told him. You need to talk to her. That conversation must have been a wake-up call for Ashley, because a few days later, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked disheveled and panicked, a far cry from the confident, entitled young woman I was used to seeing. You can't just cut me off, she said as soon as I opened the door. Yes, I can, I replied, leaning against the doorframe, my expression unwavering. Ashley stood there, shifting from foot to foot, her eyes pleading. You don't understand, she began, her voice rising with desperation. If you don't help me, I'm going to lose my apartment. Karen and Mike don't have room for me. Not my problem, I said flatly. Her jaw dropped. Not your problem? You're my brother. And for years, I've been more than that, I replied, stepping forward. I've been your safety net, your bank, your excuse to avoid growing up. I worked 2 jobs so you could live your dream. And the one time I ask for respect, you call me a failure. So, no, Ashley, it's not my problem anymore. She blinked, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I didn't mean it like that, she stammered. I was upset and I just wasn't thinking. You never think, I shot back. You never think of anyone but yourself. You used me, you used Karen and Mike, and now you're panicking because you finally have to face the consequences. Tears welled up in her eyes, big dramatic sobs that might have worked on someone else, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. You're not going to guilt me into changing my mind, I said, my voice firm. You need to figure this out for yourself. Get a job, budget your money, do whatever it takes, but leave me out of it. She didn't like that answer. You're being cruel, she snapped, wiping away her tears. You're supposed to help family. That's what family does. No, I said, my voice unwavering. Family supports each other. They don't take advantage of each other and call it love. And until you figure that out, don't bother coming back here. I closed the door, severing the financial lifeline that had sustained her for so long. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control over my own life. But I knew the fallout was far from over. True to form, Ashley did not suffer in silence. She wasted no time painting herself as the victim, twisting the narrative to suit her needs. I braced myself for the onslaught. First came the social media blitz. Vague, emotionally charged posts about betrayal and abandonment filled her feeds. Some people only care about themselves. It's heartbreaking when the ones you love the most let you down. Never thought I'd be abandoned during a difficult time. Her friends, ever eager to offer support, rallied around her, showering her with messages of sympathy and encouragement. So, sorry you're going through this, Ashley. You deserve so much better. We're here for you, girl. Anything you need, just let us know. But behind the supportive comments, a seed of doubt was beginning to take root. Some of Ashley's friends, the ones who had benefited from her lavish lifestyle, started to ask questions. What happened, Ashley? You always seemed so well off. Is there anything we can do to help? Encouraged by the outpouring of support, Ashley launched a GoFundMe campaign, claiming she had been blindsided by unexpected expenses and was struggling to make ends meet. I'm a hard-working student trying to achieve my dreams, but I've hit a bump in the road. Any help would be greatly appreciated. The donations trickled in, a paltry sum compared to the amount she needed to maintain her accustomed lifestyle. People, it seemed, were not as eager to support her extravagant spending habits as she had hoped. Meanwhile, word of the family drama spread through the grapevine, reaching distant relatives and old family friends. My phone rang incessantly, each call bringing a fresh wave of accusations and judgments. I heard you're being unreasonable. How can you leave your sister in such a difficult situation? Family comes first. You need to put your personal feelings aside and help Ashley. I'm so disappointed in you. I always thought you were the responsible one. I tried to explain my side of the story, to convey the years of sacrifice and the constant drain on my resources. But most people were unwilling to listen, blinded by their preconceived notions of family obligation. I felt like I was being vilified, portrayed as the villain in a story I never wanted to be a part of. As the days passed, Ashley's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The truth, as it always does, started to seep out. Some of Ashley's friends, growing suspicious of her sob story, started to investigate. They discovered the truth about my sacrifices, the years of financial support I had provided, and Ashley's complete lack of gratitude. They confronted her, demanding an explanation. We thought you were struggling. We didn't realize you were living off your brother's money all this time. You made us feel sorry for you, but you were just taking advantage of everyone. We can't believe you lied to us like that. Ashley, caught in her web of deceit, tried to deny the truth, but her lies fell flat, exposed by the stark reality of her actions. Her friends, disillusioned and betrayed, turned their backs on her. The invitations to exclusive parties stopped arriving. The lunch dates were canceled, and the supportive messages dwindled to nothing. Without my financial support, Ashley's social standing plummeted. She was no longer the glamorous, well-connected college student. She was just another ordinary girl, struggling to make ends meet. She moved back in with Karen and Mike, defeated and humiliated. The golden child had fallen from grace. But even in her downfall, Ashley refused to take responsibility for her actions. She blamed me for her problems, accusing me of ruining her life. He's doing this to punish me, she told Karen and Mike. He's always been jealous of me. He doesn't want me to succeed. Karen and Mike, ever eager to coddle their daughter, readily accepted her version of the story. They rallied around her, shielding her from the consequences of her actions. They continued to blame me for Ashley's misfortune, fueling the resentment and animosity within the family. The once unbreakable bond between brother and sister was shattered, replaced by a deep and bitter chasm. As the family imploded, secrets that had long been buried began to surface. Whispers of past transgressions, long-held resentments, and hidden truths filled the air, poisoning the atmosphere with mistrust and suspicion. One evening, while I was visiting my Aunt Carol, she hesitantly broached a topic that had been unspoken for years. "I need to tell you something about your father," she said, her voice low and grave. I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. My father had passed away several years ago, a sudden and unexpected heart attack. He had always been a kind and loving man, a pillar of strength and support for the family. "What is it, Aunt Carol?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Carol hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Your father, he wasn't always the man you thought he was." She proceeded to tell me a story of infidelity, financial mismanagement, and a secret life that my father had carefully concealed from the family. I listened in stunned silence, my world crumbling around me. The man I had idolized, the man I had believed to be the epitome of integrity, was revealed to be flawed and fallible. The revelation cast a new light on my parents' marriage, explaining the subtle tensions and unspoken resentments that I had never understood. It also shed light on Karen's overprotective nature, her constant need to control and manage every aspect of the family's life. She was always afraid he would leave her, Carol explained. She tried to keep him close, to make sure he wouldn't stray again. The weight of these secrets pressed down on me, crushing me with the knowledge that my family was built on a foundation of lies and deception. As Ashley struggled to adjust to her new reality, she became increasingly demanding and entitled. She expected Karen and Mike to cater to her every whim, providing her with the same level of comfort and luxury she had enjoyed when I was footing the bill. Karen and Mike, desperate to appease her, drained their savings, maxed out their credit cards, and borrowed money from friends and family. They were willing to sacrifice everything to keep Ashley happy, even if it meant jeopardizing their own financial security. One afternoon, I received a frantic call from Karen, her voice filled with panic. "You need to help us," she pleaded. "Ashley ran up a huge credit card debt in our name, and we can't afford to pay it." I hesitated. I knew I should refuse, that I shouldn't enable their coddling any further. But the image of my mother, her face etched with worry and desperation, tugged at my heart. "How much is it?" I asked, my voice resigned. "It's over $10,000, Karen sobbed. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my family's irresponsibility pressing down on me. "I'll see what I can do," I said, my voice heavy with resignation. I knew this was a mistake, that I was only prolonging the inevitable, but I couldn't bring myself to abandon my mother in her time of need. I agreed to pay off a portion of the debt, on the condition that Ashley agreed to get a job and start contributing to the family expenses. Ashley reluctantly agreed, but her heart wasn't in it. She saw the job as a temporary inconvenience, a means to an end. She had no intention of changing her entitled ways. As soon as I paid off the debt, Ashley quit her job and resumed her extravagant spending habits. She convinced Karen and Mike to take out another credit card in their name, promising to pay it off with her future earnings. But the debt continued to mount, and the financial strain on the family grew unbearable. One evening, during a heated argument, Karen finally snapped. "I can't do this anymore, Ashley," she screamed. "We're going to lose everything because of you." Ashley retorted with a torrent of insults and accusations, blaming Karen for her problems and accusing her of ruining her life. The argument escalated into a physical altercation, with Ashley shoving Karen against a wall, leaving her bruised and shaken. Mike, witnessing the scene, finally realized the extent of Ashley's selfishness and entitlement. He was horrified by her behavior, but he couldn't bring himself to confront her. He was trapped in a cycle of coddling and enabling, unable to break free from the pattern of behavior that had defined his relationship with Ashley for so long. The breaking point came when Karen and Mike received an eviction notice. They had fallen behind on their rent, unable to keep up with the mounting debt and Ashley's insatiable demands. They were facing homelessness, and they had nowhere to turn. In a moment of desperation, they swallowed their pride and reached out to me, begging me for help. "Please, you're our only hope," Karen pleaded, her voice trembling. "We're going to lose everything." I listened to her plea, my heart aching with a mixture of sympathy and resentment. I knew I shouldn't help them, that they had brought this situation upon themselves, but I couldn't bring myself to abandon them. They were still my parents, and I couldn't bear the thought of them living on the streets. I agreed to let them move into my small apartment temporarily, but I made it clear that this was a temporary solution and that they needed to take responsibility for their own lives. I sat the three of them down and laid out my conditions. Ashley had to get a job and contribute to the household expenses. Karen and Mike had to start attending financial counseling, and everyone had to agree to a strict budget. To my surprise, they agreed. They were finally ready to acknowledge the extent of their problems and to take steps to change. Ashley, forced to confront the consequences of her actions, finally started to show signs of remorse. She got a job at a local coffee shop and began to contribute to the household expenses. Karen and Mike started attending financial counseling and began to make progress in managing their debt. It was a slow and difficult process, filled with setbacks and challenges, but they were finally moving in the right direction. As they worked together to rebuild their lives, the family began to heal. The secrets and resentments that had long festered beneath the surface began to dissipate, replaced by a fragile sense of understanding and forgiveness. I realized that family wasn't just about obligation and sacrifice. It was about love, support, and the willingness to work through difficult times together. I had lost a lot along the way, but I had also gained something invaluable, a chance to rebuild my relationships with my family, to forge a new path forward, and to finally claim my own life. Years passed. Having helped my parents get back on their feet, I finally saved enough money to buy my own small house. It wasn't the grand dream I'd once envisioned, but it was mine. I filled it with the tools of my trade, the scent of oil and metal, a comforting aroma. Ashley, surprisingly, stuck with the coffee shop job for longer than anyone expected. The humbling experience, the daily grind of minimum wage work, seemed to have chipped away at her entitlement. She even enrolled in community college, taking classes at night. One sunny afternoon, Ashley visited me at my house. She brought a box of homemade cookies, a far cry from the designer handbags and expensive dinners of her past. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her voice soft and sincere, "for everything you did. Even though it was hard, I know you did what was best for me, for all of us." I looked at her, seeing a genuine humility I hadn't seen in years. "You figured it out, Ash," I said, a smile touching my lips. "That's all that matters." We sat on the porch, sharing cookies and reminiscing about the past. The air was filled with the promise of a new beginning, a chance to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of honesty and respect. Karen and Mike, meanwhile, had found peace in their simpler lives. They had learned to appreciate the value of hard work and the importance of financial responsibility. They were no longer defined by their desire to impress others, but by their commitment to each other and their family. The weight of inheritance had finally been lifted, replaced by the lightness of forgiveness and the strength of shared experience. The family, once fractured by secrets and resentments, had found a way to heal, to rebuild, and to embrace a future filled with hope and promise. Years later, I stood in the crowd, watching Ashley receive her law degree. The auditorium was filled with proud families and hopeful graduates, but my eyes were fixed on my sister. She had overcome so much, had faced her demons, and emerged stronger on the other side. I knew she would be a fierce advocate for justice, a champion for those who had been marginalized and overlooked. As Ashley walked across the stage, receiving her diploma, I felt a surge of pride and love. I had played a part in her journey, had helped her to find her way, even if it meant making difficult choices along the way. I knew that our family would never be perfect, that the scars of the past would always remain. But we had learned to live with those scars, to embrace our imperfections, and to move forward with a shared sense of purpose. The weight of inheritance had been transformed into a legacy of resilience, forgiveness, and the enduring power of family. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that our story was far from over. It was just the beginning.